So let me start by just saying that there's been an alarming increase in the number of things that you know nothing about, including presumably sword swallowing. And what's amazing is that we have this interesting inverse pyramid of knowledge. We sort of live in this world where the C-level people, the people who are supposed to be running the show, don't have a fucking clue, okay? And it progresses down, and one of the things that I've been trying to do is deal with the fact that somebody's got to figure this out. And so I'm going to talk to you about social media and basically technology and the intersection, and hopefully we'll get to a point where these guys have a slight clue, but basically what will happen is that the people who have to do this stuff will not only do it, but will enjoy it, and it'll be a worthwhile experience. So the good news is, as many of these things that are out there that are totally alarming and scary, tomorrow it'll be a different set. And so that's the rate of change, and we call that autocatalytic. It's that each change that goes on actually increases the rate of change, and so the next change is even more so. We used to talk about viral, and viral used to be sort of what is going on, how many people are talking about it, how quickly are they spreading the word. And we also knew that things wore out, but they wore out in sort of a safe fashion. They wore out, and so eventually they would sort of end up as a smooth curve, and you could create a business, and it wouldn't be, you know, the world's greatest thing forever, but it would be the thing for at least a period of time. Today, the ability to adopt new things is astonishingly quick. The ability to blow them off and forget them is 10 times faster. And so one day we love it, and the next day it's toast. And this is just the nature of the business. When you're training, as we do, 600 kids about digital media and the world and the future, every day it's an arms race. This is a great quote from Mark Zuckerberg, of all things. And I think it's right. I think that it's a constantly moving wheel, and we're trying to just barely keep up. So as an example, Facebook is really good, except in middle school, where Tumblr is now sort of moved by Facebook. But by the time the kids get back into high school, they're back on Facebook. So just, an example. I mean, and Snapchat and all these other things are constantly going on. But what we know is that it's constant motion, it's constant change. And I'm going to just talk to you about four really amazing drivers that are the future. And then I want to take 1 second and talk about the past, because we take these things already as such givens that it's hard to imagine how quickly and how short a period of time ago we had none of these things. So these four things have changed our lives most powerfully, okay? First, the personal computer, in the sense that we could now individually make and design individual content. Second, the internet, which permitted us to distribute it for the first time worldwide at virtually no cost. The third was the tools of work today, all of the sharing and all of the collaborative tools. And lastly, it was great to put it out there, it was great to share it, but we had to find it. And so Google really enabled us in an amazingly good way to find everything. Today I would tell you that Google is sort of a trap, and it's a trap because it's a mirror. It's been made so effective as a search tool that it's not a good discovery tool, and it's a little frightening because you wonder how kids are going to learn if everything that comes back to them when they initiate a search is basically stuff that they've already known about or stuff they've previously investigated. So those are the old news. Those are the four fundamental things that really brought us to today. Where are we headed? Number one, what I call hyper-personalization. We know everything about you, everything today, and it's only going to get worse. Two, the idea of high-velocity computing so fast that we can change the ground under your feet. We can actually change things while you're looking at them, and we can do that based on everything we know about you. Three, we're all tethered, okay? This idea of constant connectivity is a really significant thing. And fourthly, what we call motional, which is just this smashing together of mobile and social. And I guess I would add one more, which is slow-mo, which is social, local, or location, sort of, and mobile. Now, where is it headed? Well, first of all, it's not enough information anymore to know everything about you. We need to know where you're headed. We need to know what you're interested in. Second of all, we need to know it actually before you know it, which is exactly the rate that we presently are able to calculate and compute these things. Third, anything and every single thing that we deal with will compute. And in addition to computing, it will connect us to everything else in the world. The Internet of Things is right around the corner. Smart reach, the ability to hit me when it's relevant, when I care about it, when it's important to me, that's everything. And everything will be mobile. In fact, the thought of websites is sort of yesterday's news. And lastly, I want to talk for a minute about what I'm most excited about, and that's how work is going to look. And work is going to be very interesting, and hopefully everything will change about work, and it'll be widely distributed. We call this wiki work, the idea that work can take place anywhere. It's no longer place-bound. It's no longer time-bound. And hopefully we'll see these changes in schools too, because our schools are totally fucked, okay? And the reason that they're totally fucked is that they're place or time or butt in your seats, constructed, not mastery constructed. And I just had a meeting before I came over here with a guy who's in the construction business, and I was trying to explain to him, the simple proposition, which is we would say if you got an 85 or a 90 in school that you did really well, on to the next grade, right? But if we said to this guy, build the foundation, and if you get it 90%, that's right, we're going to go right on to the first floor. And if we get the first floor about 75%, that's a C. It's okay. It's a gentleman's C. Let's go on to the next floor. Nobody does things like that. That's how we run our schools. You spend a certain amount of time, we kick you on. We don't really give a shit whether you've mastered anything. So we've got to change that. And that's what's really exciting. And that's how work is going to change as well. Okay, so number one, you are what you're interested in. This is the Wayne Gretzky thing about let's skate to where the puck is. It's not sufficient to anticipate and then move to it because we can't be chasing anything. And what we've discovered again is that what you're interested in, you make an astonishing amount of time for, but we have to compel you, we have to engage you. It's not enough to just expose you to this stuff. So this is roughly what Google collects every time you do a search, 57 different items, Facebook about the same. Today, the driver of every business is going to be data, and personal data. Think of it as the oil of the digital age. This is what Facebook knew about you in 2005. This is 2010. This is today. It's just getting worse and worse, and it's accelerating, and we're willing participants, and we're willing participants because we're making a fair trade, and it's an interesting thing. This all started with Facebook. Before Facebook, you basically couldn't be, you could be a dog, you could be a cat. Now you actually have to be who you are, and it's completely changed marketing. It's changed everything, okay, in very interesting ways. If you don't know this story, this was the father who called up Target and said, "You assholes, stop sending my 16-year-old daughter maternity coupons." And they said, "You better ask your daughter a few more questions," okay? Because they were able to determine that she was pregnant, okay? This is how this goes. Can I tell you something about the credit card business, okay? The credit card business today spends a great deal of time and has the ability to predict, based on about 4 different things, whether a marriage is on the rocks, okay? Flowers sent to another address. Self-improvement, somehow, when I want to look, better because, I'm looking at other people. And singles bars, okay? And why do they do this? Because if you're in the midst of a divorce, you're a really bad risk for paying your credit card bills. It's just one of the things that they do. And so this is just continuing. Google knows and can predict real estate sales based on Google searches 24% more accurately than the people in the business can do it, okay? The real estate organizations, they don't have a clue compared to this, but Google can take a series of keywords and construct this kind of knowledge and wisdom. Chango is an interesting site. It says, if I'm working with search results, I'm too late, so I'm going to feed you information on what people are looking for, okay? So mapping these interests permits us to get ahead of the curve. And by getting ahead of the curve, we're not playing catch-up, we're moving the ball forward. And think of this in the simplest terms as the difference between diagnostics and prognostication or prognostics, okay? All predictive, all based on knowing everything, knowing where you're headed, getting there before you. Facebook is constantly engineering socially a whole lot of things. They're adding a whole new series of buttons. The best button of all is the want button, okay? They have a whole series of, major apparel and other retail folks who are using the want button very, very successfully. And of course, it's very clear that this whole idea of social media is changing the game. To imagine the amount of time being spent in social media, you just have to imagine what would happen if you left that vacuum to its own devices, because someone will fill it. It'll be the competition, it'll be someone, but the idea is that you should be the ones doing that. Facebook is so connected now. About 10 or 11 million businesses now run through Facebook Connect, that simple little blue button. And it gives them a window on the world that's really, really amazing. So I think of Google as a very powerful tool built by a bunch of really smart engineers. And I think of Facebook as basically having a much easier game, because Facebook has all of this information that you've shared with them and told them. So think of Google as a rearview mirror. Think of Facebook as sort of a sniper scope, okay? That's the nature of the game. That's why something like 40% of all of the display advertising has moved from other traditional sort of search channels onto Facebook. And it's just going to accelerate. When you hear people talking about optimizing for Google and all of this stuff, it's yesterday's news. It's really, really yesterday's news. You can't beat an algorithm. You can't beat this kind of motion. What you need to do is ask effectively people to share this information with you. Now, the other thing that's happened that's really interesting is that we've found new tools that didn't exist before. It used to be that we lived in a world of proxies. So we would say, if you're here and we run an ad there, we're going to have a certain result. But what's changed, and the reason it's green is because it's money infused, is we now know and we can connect what we tell you with what you do, okay? So we have a very powerful feedback loop, and that loop is going to be controlled not by the folks who are sitting here up on top, but by the people who control the information about payment. And so Amazon right now is able to move an astonishing amount of their total business by this predictive kind of recommendation engine. More people, in fact, go to Amazon now for shopping than go to Google for search. And most amazingly, and sort of the country next to be heard from, and entirely possibly the salvation of Apple, is that they have over 600 million credit cards built into the iTunes store. They will be the most effective purchasing power and system in the world as soon as they announce this pay service. So it's great that they have a 5C and a gold one and all this other stuff. That's not the business that we expect to see Apple really move the needle with respect to. Now, to tell you the difference in methodology that personal information brings and makes possible, this is what sales traditionally looks like if you're a traditional reporting organization. This is what sales looks like if you have this kind of precision that's now table stakes. It's the way you have to do it, okay? So we can look and say, it wasn't a flat period of time. It was basically a completely promotion-driven activity. And this is the kind of information we're getting. This is Ticketmaster, but this is Ticketmaster enabled by Facebook. Now, who wouldn't want to know where your friends were sitting? Who wouldn't want to know which of your friends are going? Who wouldn't want to make sure your parents didn't know, okay? So you can shut your parents out from this information. But this kind of information drives commerce to an astonishing extent. We did the artwork for Tyra Banks's new book. That may strike you as an oxymoron, okay? That word fam up there, this is how close she is to her fans. They're like family, okay? So she has a mere 3.3 million of those folks. We sent each of them, before the book launched, a personal video from Tyra. When the book came out, it was #1 on Barnes & Noble, #2 on Amazon. It's virtually unreadable. And if that's not bad enough, it's the first book of a trilogy, okay? So in politics, we can tell you what you want to hear. We can specifically taper messages. So for the campaign, basically, we talked to active friends and connected them to other friends who hadn't yet voted. Women, moms, people in certain geographic locations, all part of this tool to basically connect you and reward you. And by the way, we found out another astonishing thing. All these campaigns where you hear about phone rooms and stuff, okay? An astonishing half of the people that were in the national voting pool do no longer have landlines. It's just an astonishing thing. What's 80%? 80% is the ability of Facebook to predict whether you're going to change your status to dating another person, okay? A person out of the 170 million people in the United States, okay? 80% is also roughly the way that most of the population of Brazil found out what was going on in terms of the revolution and all of the activity that's going on there. This is an ecosystem that is beyond anything we've ever seen. I mean, it's that powerful. And why do we do it? And believe me, it's not just the kids. We do it because it's a trade, okay? We're trading convenience, productivity, time, money for our privacy. And it's only part of that. It's also because we want to be where our friends are. It's also because we don't want to do redundant things. It's also because we feel invested in these different things. But mostly it's about money. And it's about money because as we connect to customers over the lifetime of a customer relationship, they become more and more and more valuable. So you're seeing not so much new energy and effort being devoted to the front end of the funnel, capturing and conquest marketing. Way more is being spent on services like Belly or Starbucks Premium, these kinds of things, trying to connect to and deepen the engagement to this relationship with customers. And that's where a lot of this is headed. The insurance companies have figured this out. Virtually every insurance company except one of the top 20 now will give you a little device. And you put it in your car and it measures your driving habits. And if you drive well, they'll save you 30% on your insurance. You're saying, watch me for 30 days, invade my privacy, you know, track me basically, perfectly fine, because you're going to save me money. That's sort of this personalization, this idea that they can take purchase intent and get ahead of the curve. The ability to predict the future is also just beginning. You may have read about Orbitz. They finally sort of fessed up that they send more expensive ads if you're inquiring on a Mac than on a PC. That's just the beginning, okay? This is a grocery site. And as you're on the grocery site, they have individualized pricing. But do you think they give me the best price for the Charmin tissue because I'm a consistent Charmin user? It's really soft. No, no. They give it to the Kleenex guys because they want to move the Kleenex guys to Charmin, okay? So what we're seeing is sites that permit you in the 30 milliseconds that a web page loads to personalize offers to the consumer. We're seeing Facebook saying, after you leave Facebook and come back, we're actually going to send you these cute little reminder ads that say, you know, we know you didn't buy it yet, but we wanted to remind you that it's a really good looking shoe, okay? And that's also continuing, but it's becoming so smart that it's not simply brute force even. If they knew you were looking at a car, they can slice and dice what the car was. They can change the offer so that if you're looking at a luxury car, they're talking about perks. If you're looking at an economy car, they're talking about, you know, fuel and green. And if you just bought a car, they don't waste an ad on you at all, because that's how smart the system goes. All of this is part of this idea of individualizing and communicating in really amazing ways all of this data. Individual user, individual content, individual pricing, individual delivery, right when the consumer needs it. Facebook and Twitter are both beginning to mine conversations. They would tell you that it's anonymized, but that doesn't keep them from sending you ads that relate to the content of your conversations. Twitter. Everybody thinks it's sort of a trivial little thing. It's really not. It's really where business and your audience and everything else is headed, and that's where they're living now. It's a two-way channel in a very, very powerful and effective sense. I recommend this site, but only if you don't have a life. Twist Story takes the 65 billion tweets a day, and if you put in a word, it'll start feeding you all of the tweets that use that word. Now, it's in the abstract, love is fine, hate is fine, but imagine that this was your name, your business. This kind of content is now available. And this kind of surveillance is going on every single day in many, many respects. So that's just the idea of what's going on. We can tell who loves us, who hates us, who's undecided. Sort of the definition of a great baseball manager is keep the people who hate you away from the ones who haven't made up their mind. But we can tell within these channels who are the powerful voices, what are the channels in particular and the tools they're using, and why would you spend your money otherwise? So for example, when the iPhone was going to have a second provider, Verizon, AT&T was very concerned with good reason, right? AT&T should be concerned if some guy with string and 2 cans had an alternative to their system. But in any event, so what happened here is we looked at thousands and millions of people and we determined who was on the fence, who was happy, who was unhappy. And what did they do? Well, they concentrated the spend on the people on the fence. This is how you do this kind of stuff. We can now tell everything. So this is 250,000 tweets about breaking up. This tells you that a bunch of things. Nobody wants to be alone on Christmas. You don't take your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend home for the holidays. Okay, April Fools can be a really problematic thing. This kind of stuff. We can tell the mood of the country, okay? And, you know, movies, all of these things, all the traditional things are going out of the windows. You know, we're literally going to see, instead of the idiot who stands in front of you and says, put your phones away, we're involved with the Tribeca Film Festival. We encourage people to tweet. You have to. You have to take that chance. And we have very powerful new theatrical technologies as well. This is a site that I'll share with you confidentially, mostly for those of us who are old folks. It's called RunP. And RunP tells you when to leave the movie to pee, okay? So that you don't miss a good part. And it tells you what's going on while you're out, okay? Only for those of us with very weak bladder control. Anyway, how are they going to be connected? By devices, okay? All the time, in every way, shape, and form, this is what's going on. We've moved officially away from the desktop, okay? We're now mobile. We're now shopping for our groceries in the L station. This is a button that delivers your favorite pizza. It's a refrigerator magnet. We're able to project purchase opportunities into all kinds of different venues. Your phone knows when you're looking at it, so it turns off when you're not looking at it. This is a series of 4 or 5 different companies trying to take advantage of the fact that we look at our phones 150 times a day. It's a billboard, okay? This you throw in the laundry, in the dryer, and when the dryer stops spinning, it sends you a phone message and says your laundry is dry. Electronic leashes, find your luggage, all this kind of stuff. This is, again, one of my favorites, okay? We've all moved. We've all given our most precious property to a bunch of toothless guys and hoped that it was coming back. This is a fake little box that you put in with the load, and it sends you a digital update with GPS of where your load is the whole time that it's being moved. It's very reassuring. Okay, so I mentioned Smart Reach, the idea of delivering me content if, when I need it, and at the time I need it. So what do we need? When do we need it? Where do we need it? Without asking, without permission, but just being there. This is what Google Now is all about. And so this is another powerful tool. If you've ever been in a bar, you've had an argument, okay? This creates a fake Wikipedia page, okay? Look, Wikipedia says this, whatever this is, okay? It's a fabulous and very powerful tool, all right? But your phone will tell you where your friends are. It'll tell you about buildings and the history of buildings. It'll tell you who's attending events, who's at clubs, all of this kind of stuff. It's a very powerful link, far more powerful than a static computer. And it's, you know, we don't even think of these necessarily as phones anymore. We think of them as sort of mobile trackers. This is Prague during the day, at night, and which phones are representing tourists in Prague. So crowds are going to be measured in new ways, movement in front and around buildings and things like that. All of this will be part of this new calculation. And amazingly, we leave this trail and we're just beginning to mine it. So one of the most amazing things is that Walmart swears by end caps. They also swear by the idea that it changes every single week. Now, they do this mostly by superstition. Retail Next is a company that can tell you what actual people are doing in your stores, okay? They can tell you about dwell time. They can tell you which people walk from a display right to the counter. So they can tell us levels of effectiveness of communication, how stores are designed, how material is presented that was never available before because we have a tracker on all of us. And it's very, very powerful. This is another great thing. Jamba Juice, you know, they measure their world in 15-minute increments. They're so smart that when they assign overtime, they're able to pick the person to give the overtime to who's the best salesperson. And that's just the beginning. You've probably seen Coke Free or whatever they call it, okay? These dispensers, we think of them as soda dispensers. They're actually field research tools because they tell us how millions of consumers want their Cokes mixed. They tell us about what should the new product be. Should it be cherry Coke lime, should it, whatever it is. I mean, consumers every single day are feeding this information back to us in really amazing and interesting ways. Okay, now work, last but not least. The porous workplace, the idea that real time matters, okay? This is what's so exciting. We have scraps of time, millions and millions of scraps of time. And we can recapture them now because we can distribute work all over the world to talented people who are place-bound, location-challenged, all of these things. We can get that all back. And it's very, very exciting, and it's how businesses will be designed. Just to give you an idea of the scope of Wikipedia, it's enormous, okay? More than 75,000 people do it. But to give you an idea of how this works, for more than a decade, researchers were trying to solve a riddle in connection with AIDS, about how certain proteins folded back on each other. They pushed it out to about 200,000 gamers, and they solved this in basically 2 weeks, after a decade, okay? By the application of enormous amounts of intelligence and just sheer volume, okay? I'm going to just tell you that the economy is changing in a very powerful way. And we need to take this into account as well. 50% of us will be freelancers momentarily if we're not already. And so the idea of systems that are going to connect us to all kinds of new resources. And by the way, a tip for freelancers, because I know a lot of you are in design, maybe you're freelancers, you only need 2 out of 3. Turns out you can be a raging, raging asshole, you know, if you do great work and you deliver on time, okay? It turns out that if you're a great guy and deliver on time, the fact that you're not terrific doesn't even matter, okay? It's all about the people stuff. But these tools now, like TaskRabbit, look at the composition of TaskRabbit. PhDs, stay-at-home moms, retirees, why lose them to the workforce? Why not figure out ways to distribute these opportunities to them? That's what's so tremendously exciting. We can push out work all over the world. We can get people to do tasks, to design logos, to hire experts, to do all these kinds of things across a very broad spectrum. And lastly but not least, and this is usually for the nerds in the audience, okay? Everybody's seen this movie, right? This is the You've Got That Loving Feeling. If you're a nerd, one of the most interesting sort of new tools that's out there is called Wing Woman, and you hire a really attractive woman to go to the bar with you. And presumably the other women will think that that must mean you're not a colossal nerd, okay? And so this is just another application of this sort of distributed technology. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.